Hello, and welcome to the last lecture of the semester. Um, let's get right to it. So what I want to do today is take you through a few sample, I'm so sorry about the fluctuating light, take you through a few sample questions for the midterm, for the final, that give us an opportunity to talk about the book as a whole and some of its major themes and techniques. So let me share screen with you. Um, right. So, so I'm removing that. That's no longer true. On the day of the final, I will post 2 questions. You will choose one of the questions. You will have 24 hours to answer the question in the form of a 3-paragraph essay. Remember to cite specific examples from the novel, not overall abstract examples. So I'm going to take you through three sample questions and the way that I brainstormed those questions. And some of them have, where I could, I gave a concrete examples of what I came up with, and some of them I did not, but I just wanted to show you what my brainstorming would look like. I did not hammer these out into full answers. I'm showing you my thought process and the kind of the way that I hope that you come up with examples from the book in the same way when you're answering your essay questions. Since I already demonstrated how I want that essay to look, right now it's more just about thinking about the book altogether as a whole. So to answer this question, you must form a thesis that answers the question, just like we did with all of the essay responses. By now, you know what that means. So some sample questions. Let's start with the first one here. Let me make this bigger. How does Lauren expand her ideas about who to trust as her group grows through the book? What are her guiding rules about who to trust? What do you believe the author is saying about trust? Find and analyze 3 instances in which Lauren had to decide whether or not to trust someone and why she did so. So what I did to answer this question, I literally just started from the beginning and thought of every time, I mean, as many times as I could think of. I'm sure there were more than what I came up with. Every time Lauren had to deal with the question of trust and where it came from. And then at the end, what I'm kind of doing with all of these notes is, what do they all add up to? So when I take all of my examples together and string them together, what do they all have in common? What is the story that is being told by all of these examples? So let's start from the beginning. So one of the first questions of trust comes when Lauren decides to share with Joan her fears about not only her fears about what's going to happen to the neighborhood, but also what they're going to do about it. Well, we're going to have to go strike out on the road, right? In her mind, she's like, Joan is my friend and I want to help her, so I'm going to trust her. But she learns quickly that she cannot trust Joan, right? After that, she makes the decision to trust no one, right? Where does she learn this? Well, she learned this from being burned by Joan. She learned this from Keith's story about the man going to Alaska, from Keith's being killed by the guys he was working for. We see her make this decision when she was kind of relatively in doubt about whether or not she could even trust Curtis, whether or not she was going to bring him with. And at this point, I suppose it's important to note that I'm using the word trust as a catch-all, because trust is so much more than just deciding who you're going to tell your secrets to, right? It's also, who do you trust to have your back? Who do you trust to be useful and helpful on the road? When Lauren in her mind was thinking that she was going to go alone and not bring Curtis with her, it wasn't because, well, it was partly because she wasn't sure she could share her secrets with him, but it was also about whether or not she could rely on him, right, as a helpful person, or whether or not she was just better off alone because you can really rely on no one but yourself. But then once she's out in the world and she's immediately hit with the realization, like, oh my God, I know nothing out here. That night when she's alone for the first time after the collapse of the wall, And she comes to the realization, I know nothing out here. I am alone. I'm scared. I have full brain full of theoretical knowledge and no practical knowledge. And that moment kind of scared her. And then luckily she comes across Harry and Zara. So what are the trust lessons that comes from that interaction? Trust people you know, trust people with skills you need, trust people who understand you. She has a whole, problematic uh trust journey with Harry, right? Because he thinks he understands her, but he doesn't. And the opposite thing happens with Zara, who she thinks she does not understand Zara until they realize they have a lot more in common than they knew. Zara has shared skills. Harry gets invited to Earthseed, and that's what makes him trust Lauren. Zara has a history of understanding people addicted to drugs, people who had hyperempathy syndrome. After that, they decide trust only the people you know. So, like when Zara and Harry and Lauren are having a fire, and all kinds of people come up to them and try to share the fire, maybe just trying to roast a potato, maybe trying to intimidate them. They decide trust no one, right? But then the trust develops more. Trust your natural allies and people with children, which is like Travis and Natividad, and who are their racial makeup as a group matches that of Lauren and Harry and Zara. So they're like, oh, well, you're our natural allies, right? So first, we're only like halfway through the book at this point. And the point is, what have we seen so far in this arc? We have seen that Lauren's trust develops, right? What Lauren defines as trust and has grown. It has changed. It changes literally every time they encounter new people. I go down the list. Trust people who help, like Bancole. Trust people who need help, like Jill, Allie, Justin, Emery, and Tori. Grayson? Like what? So the question of Grayson is so interesting to me. By the time Grayson shows up, it's like the very end of the book. And by all accounts, by everything measurable, he is someone who should not be trusted, right? And yet they tolerate him and they don't drive him off or anything. And it's clear that's probably partly because one of their members is romantically interested in him, Emery. But it's also maybe because, like, at this point, the group is so big and the group is so strong and solid that they kind of have the power to tolerate someone who challenges their trust, right? To kind of like wait it out and see. Because one of the first things that Lauren notices or deduces, I suppose, is that Grayson is a product of trauma, right? She immediately is like, okay, I'm pretty sure this person's a former slave, maybe even hyper empathetic himself. So rather than driving him off, she trusts him because they share possible sources of trauma and possible sources of pain. I guess that answers the question, but maybe not. Don't know. Trust people with shared dreams. That's what they land on, Acorn. So what does it add up to, right? What is the story of trust that Octavia Butler is telling us over the course of the novel? Number one, you can't trust no one, right? If Lauren had never trusted anybody, who knows what would have happened to her? Like all of these people come to her aid. Her resources grow over the course of the novel. Everyone has to learn to trust each other. Like everything else in this novel, trust must be adaptable. What runs through all of these? Trust people you share something with, right? That's kind of what I came up with. And again, I don't think Octavia Butler is telling us this is how you trust people, right? This is just the story of trust that Octavia Butler wanted to tell. I don't think Octavia Butler is necessarily sitting there being like, what lesson would I like to impart about trust? Think of it more as this is the story that Octavia Butler is telling about trust, right? And especially trust in times of crazy hardship and a world that is falling apart. To me, yeah, right. Big question, why trust Grayson? What's there to trust with Grayson? All right, let's do another one. In what ways does the religion of Earthseed resemble a real religion? In what ways does it differ? How does it help them survive? So here is my brainstorming about Earthseed. We'll start from the beginning. First of all, Earthseed is meant to offer lessons for daily life, but also an overarching philosophy, just like Christian. I grew up Catholic. I'm no longer Catholic, but that's the one I know about. So that's probably what I'll compare it to. Daily lesson like power struggles are just two animals headbutting, or drowning people often die fighting their captors. But an overarching philosophy, you either work with change or be steamrolled by it. So, there are daily lessons in Christianity like, thou shalt not steal, or um, do not covet what your neighbor has, But then there's overarching philosophy, which is like love thy neighbor, you should love the people that you coexist with. Okay. Earthseed is an exercise in contemplating God. So a lot of Earthseed, especially the discussions that the people of Earthseed had, were trying to think of like, what does it mean that God has changed? Does this person have consciousness? How does it compare to other gods? Is there a morality? What does this God require of us? Which is, a lot like other religions. Earthseed is meant to be discussed and shared. So I love that they were constantly debating it. Anytime Lauren brought it to someone, they were curious. They kind of fought against it. They made suggestions about it. And every person kind of brought different perspectives to what Earthseed was about. And that is, any good religion has been through, tempered by hundreds of years of debate and contemplation. And that is by its members, by its leaders. It is something, religion is something that you participate in, right? It's not just something you like read and memorize, right? It's something you engage with, which is very much how Earthseed functioned for these people. Earthseed's concept of heaven, right? They go to space. They're gonna go to the stars, but it's also it's a place to go, but also a goal and a journey. Earthseed does not offer up a moral code. Earthseed is never like, don't steal, right? Earthseed is never like, don't cheat on your wife. Don't, killing is wrong. What it so there's never rules like that, even though the group does adopt a moral code, right? They don't kill unless it's out of self-defense. They don't steal unless it's from the bodies of people they had to kill in self-defense. They share labor. They split. They don't share their money, but they do help each other out by cooperative purchasing. Their Earthseed does not offer a moral code that we see in this book. So that's different than a religion. Earthseed's God is not something that watches over you or responds to your prayers, right? Earthseed's God is indifferent, which is interesting for a God in a religion. Lauren says that it's not a mystical religion, but only someone like Lauren would say that. Because to me, Earthseed's mysticism lies in the dream of heaven. So like when Travis is like, when he first hears that Earthseed's destiny is to go to the stars, Travis goes, "You're crazy, girl." Because that is mystifying, right? That's a mystifying idea that the goal of a religion is to take us to space. Like, oh wow, especially in this time period when there is no space funding, there's no funding for space travel. There's no, even the sciences are kind of by the wayside. But also in its general engagement with the sciences, like analyze this stone, or my God is a force of nature. Like these things sound like Sufism or Buddhism. They're they're deeply mystical, even though Lauren is like, no, it's just science. It's like, well, people who don't understand science are mystified by it. Even especially people who understand science are mystified by it. So what's the thing that runs through all of this? Earthseed that I see, Earthseed is more philosophy than it is religion. But like Lauren says to Bankole, religion sticks while philosophy might not. Lauren even knows there's some manipulative elements to it, which is another thing that aligns it with traditional religion. It helps them to survive because it makes them adaptable. It encourages them to think cooperatively and it honors each other's strengths. Your teachers are all around you. So, again, this is just a brainstorming exercise showing me connecting all different parts of a book. Let's do one more. Analyze Octavia Butler's use of fire throughout the story. So, here I just made a list of all the times that fire made a big, important impression. So, Lauren's dream, Los Angeles is a burning husk, the paints, the collapse of the neighborhood, arson is used to flush out communities, Jill and Allie burned their father's house down, the final firestorm along the freeway, the burnt out scrape that was the home of Bancole's sister. So, stringing all these examples together, Lauren describes the phoenix rising from the ashes that first must burn to do so. What is corrupted must be burned away for the good to thrive. We see this in the real world, controlled burns by Native Americans to their forests to get rid of all the dead, um, the dead growth, everything that's shed from the trees and the dead trees, so that the living trees can thrive, but also so that it doesn't pose a risk for future fires. Does this make the paints a positive or negative force? So interesting. So the paints are these agents of chaos throughout the novel who are like evil, horrible murderers. And yet fire is being depicted as neither good nor bad, but but essential, right? Fire is essential. It must burn away what is not working any longer. Involving this, all member perhaps they provide a sort of mirror to Earthseed, right? So like there's the paints and then there's the Earthseed group, right? And the paints are these agents of chaos, while the Earthseed group, they use fire and change to guide them rather than to destroy. I don't know, that's just kind of brainstorming and developing off the top of my head. While members of the group have been through fire all members of the group have been through a fire in some way, leaving something behind, be it a non-functioning community, oppressors in the forms of husbands or fathers or jobs. Sometimes that fire came at their own hands, like Jill and Allie, and sometimes from others, the paints. Fire is the earthseed god made manifest in the physical form. It changes all that it touches. It can be worked with and used, or it can destroy or be used to destroy. So that's my brainstorming around one of the symbols. So this would be the first step to developing my 3-paragraph essay, right? Reading a question, making a list of all of the times that all of finding the meat of the question and finding every example of that meat in the novel, stringing it all together. Now, would I write about every single one of these things in the novel? No. For example, I would not write about everything on this list in my 3-paragraph essay. I would choose 3 of the most effective examples. For example, let's say I would want to talk about maybe the paints in general, and I want it to be from all across the novel. Remember that. I don't want it to just be from the beginning or just from the end or just from the middle. I want it to be from all parts of the novel. So Los Angeles is a burning husk, right? The city is burning down. Jill and Allie killing their father, perhaps. And then the burnt out scrape that was the home of Bancole's sister. Maybe those are my 3 examples, right? And using them to tell the story that I think Octavia Butler is telling about with the fire. Okay, so that's it. This video is already too long. I won't say goodbye in this video. I'll do that in a closing video. So good luck. Look out for the 2 response questions tomorrow morning. I will post them. I will expect them back to me by Thursday at midnight, unless we've made special circumstances with each other in advance. Okay, thank you so much. And I look forward to reading your work.